how relevant it remained.
This project came up.
It came about because on the night before September 11th, I placed a roommate ad online in the Village Voice for my apartment. I was living in the West Village, just a few blocks from here, and I needed a roommate, and it was approaching the middle of the month, and so I placed the ad, not knowing what was going to happen the next day, certainly. And then I left my apartment and stayed in Brooklyn for about a week. And when I came back, I had all these messages of people wanting to come see my apartment, even though you couldn't get into the neighborhood because of what happened. You know, the National Guard was like parked in front of my building. So that's sort of really the true story where that was the starting point for this whole thing. But the bigger challenge at that time, 10 years ago, was the audience, and trying to get an audience interested, because it was still relatively close to the events of September 11th. Now, with 10 years that have passed, I think there's been more time. I think New York changes so much that the population of the city changes, so that people here are a little more open to the subject, and then at a national level, people are just more interested now, because it's sort of looking at it now more as history in terms of what happened than something that was a very recent event happening. The film is really about what terrorism is about, which is really instilling fear in people, and the movie is really kind of about overcoming that in a lot of ways, and trying to live in a world that's different, but not live in fear.
Well, it was a play first, and then it became a film, and it was my first job out of school. And the play and the movie are really a microcosm of what it was like to be in New York, because you did, in New York, after 9/11, strangers came together. I mean, you walk around New York now, you very rarely talk to a stranger.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
And at that time you did. We were talking, everyone was talking to each other, and consoling each other, and comforting each other, and asking for each other's stories. We're getting everyone's stories. So the play, beautifully, the play and the film, beautifully dramatized what it was like to have the stories between strangers.
Someone who went through the same thing.
It's very relatable. There's somebody in this film for everybody to relate to, not just Eric, who's the central character, but everybody has an experience, and you can find yourself in any of the characters.
You're still very, very fresh.
When we did the play, it wasn't even 2 years after 9/11. It was still a very emotional time. It's still a very touchy subject. But it was one of the first 9/11 plays that I can remember. And I remember the time being one of the first 9/11 plays. And people really responded very favorably to it. I think it's gentle, it's not about the day, it's about after the day. A lot of people don't want to talk about the day. The day was horrible. You can relive the day online. You can go to YouTube and relive the day.
Yeah.
It's the day is, and especially for young people who don't remember that day, this play is a wonderful way to see what it was like, what it felt like. It's easy for them to go and look about the day, but it's not so easy for them to know how we all took it, how we reacted, how it felt. And I think that this should be a play that people, this should be a film that people really take a look at. I'm not surprised that it's still relevant, but I mean, none of us could have anticipated that 10 years later, there's still be terrorism like this, like there is. That we'd still have these barbarians out there doing horrible, terrible things. Nobody could have imagined that. I don't know what I thought was going to. It's interesting. I think it'll feel like a period piece, as it is, as it should, because it is a period piece now. But I think it'll also feel wonderfully nostalgic, and it'll bring up, in a good way, what it was like then, what it was like to be around then. It'll be a nice reminder of how we took care of each other. I remember how terrible. I mean, of course, we'll never forget how terrible it is, but we should remind ourselves how good we were, how well we took care of each other.